Hello, everyone, and it's great to have you here tonight. Welcome to this second session of the conference cycle module set up by the École d'Urbanisme de Paris or Urban Planning School of Paris. And we welcome with us two external speakers whose name is Ilana Boltvinik and Marine Legrand, who makes us the honor to share their experience on the theme City and Traces, Waste as a City Reading, or in French, Ville et Traces, les déchets comme lecture de ville. So let's try a presentation. Mrs. Boltvinik is a researcher in social sciences in humanities at Veracruzana University in Mexico, but she will especially speak to us as a member of the art research collective TRES, whose goal is to explore the public space through plastic practice and especially with photography. And they highlight the informative nature of waste in the city and society. And it is a collective that make international performance around the relations between waste, city, and citizen. And now we present Marine Legrand.
So yes, our second contributor is Marine Legrand, an anthropologist. Marine Legrand has a PhD in environmental anthropology. Her main research topics are anthropology of knowledge, political ecology, biodiversity management, ecological engineering, landscape design, and urban planning. But she also studies the human body and geochemical cycles, and in particular the uses, the knowledges, and the imaginations associated with the couple wastes. And now we are handing over the speak to Ilana for her presentation.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour être là. I know it's not the easiest thing to be connected, but I appreciate everybody being here and I appreciate seeing everybody. And without further ado, I will start my presentation. So I will share the screen first. Okay. Well, I am very happy to be here and to speak a bit about my experience and our experience as a collective in the sphere of public space. And in particular, today, I will introduce a little bit about the collective so that you have at least a small idea of what we work around. So we have been working on the theme of waste since 2009. We're a collective that is called Trois, which sounds maybe strange because we're only two people. But with each project, the collective grows and expands, or sometimes it becomes smaller because our practice always involves other disciplines and other knowledges. So in that sense, it's a transdisciplinary collective that is working across different spheres. Huh? So one of the things that is important is that our research is based on art practice, or our art practice is based on research. And I think this could be very interesting in the theme of within the field of urbanism, because one of the things that art-based practice does is explore in a very active or reactive way public space. So it's a way to get knowledge of space through other types of mechanisms that are not necessarily studying the space or acting directly on it, but rather going around it and sometimes in playful and sometimes in provocative ways, trying to articulate space or the urban space in particular with a different perspective. The other important point is waste, not as an ecological problem, and I think that's very important, although ecology, of course, is important, but it's more as a conceptual residue or something that is always cast aside, waste as something that we do not want to see And it's very interesting to see that reflected on cartography, for example, where you will hardly ever find a map that has waste stations or landfills marked on it. It's not a place people want to take a photograph in as a memory, and it's not either a very visited or solicited place. It's rather outside. So that for us is a very interesting metaphor of what we choose not to see about how the city is constituted. Yeah. I'm trying to see how I check there. So one of the, I think, important parts of this is that we don't understand waste as a byproduct or as a result of human activity, but rather one of the things that is important is that waste produces a certain type of social space. This is a photograph of Tlatelolco, that's a landfill in Mexico, which I think depicts very well the interaction between different types of actors that are involved with waste, and how waste has its own economy, its own social system, and that sometimes or very often is a reflection of how a society is constituted. So I would like to start with a question for everybody that's present here. What do you think are these objects that you see on the screen? I think also your colleagues are going to send a quiz or something, but if someone wants to answer, that would be great. Does anybody have any type of speculation of what this could be, these strange images in front of you?
Pour le public, vous trouverez dans le chat le lien vers le questionnaire pour pouvoir répondre à ces questions.
And please do it very fast, because I'm going to change the slide and then you're going to miss your opportunity of guessing. So nobody has an answer to what this could be?
Some potions, maybe?
Okay, what type of potions? Let's say they're magical potions, but what type of magical
medicines,
potions?
probably.
Medicines?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I would say an organic potion, organic composition.
Sort of tea type of thing?
Maybe.
Okay. You're both actually more or less on the spot there, huh? But okay, so here you have another image so that you see that there's a whole history surrounding these objects and these liquids that you're finding here. Huh? So I hope everybody has sent that, because the next thing I'm going to tell you may be very interesting. It's urine. They're urinals. Yeah? So what you see here are all the different colors of urine. And in the center here, you have a doctor, a physician called in its time, that would look, smell, and taste the urine so that you could understand what your health was like. Huh? Did anybody, well, here you have another quiz on your chat that I would love you to answer, because then you will get in the next feedback later on what type of disease you may be suffering according to the color of your urine this morning. I really hope it's not number 9, huh? Anyway, all this is to introduce quickly a project that we developed as a collective in 2011, and it extended until 2013. That's called All That Shines is Gold. And the title is quite simple, because for us, urine is one of the most valuable pieces of information we can have in ourselves. It's both a public and a private thing. Once it's out of our body, it seems we don't care what really happens to it. It goes into a sewer system or into a plant or into a building. And we leave part of our body there, and part of our body that has a whole lot of information. It's still today a very important method to determine the health of a human being. We all have or have had to have a urine test in a certain time or a certain moment. So this project in particular is situated in Mexico City, or La Zona Metropolitana del Valle de México. So this is the great urban Mexico City. And this point is one of the exits of Mexico City towards the highway north to Pachuca. You can see that the population of Mexico City, I know this you probably know already, is very large. So this point becomes a very hectic and very troubled spot. I will show you in a minute. Buen viaje, bon voyage is what you see when you get to this point of town. That's not outside the city. So the project was developed here in this small strip of space that you see here. So you have, in particular, the exit, the highway exit, the return, the public station for transport, and all these things converge in this point that are usually always this full. We also discovered later on that there was a community of people living here, but this was a secondary effect. So what, you may be asking, has this to do with urine? No? Other than perhaps someone might stop their car, which seems very difficult in the middle of a highway, and pee on the sidewalk. Well, that's not what caught our attention. No? What caught our attention in this ever-changing landscape was another very shining and very interesting object that was a double for us. It was one of the most adventurous and most beautiful things we had seen up to that point. These are bottles of PET bottles, PET bottles, filled with urine. And yes, this liquid, even with this strange color, is urine, believe me. I didn't taste it, but I did smell it. So we found these shiny objects in the side of the street, and that led us to think a bit of what was going on with this type of thing. So we decided, first of all, to recollect this double configuration of waste, which is beautiful, because on one hand you have a plastic bottle, and on the other hand you have urine. Both separately work very well. Now, both are at a certain point waste, and both at a certain point are not waste. So urine can be used for plants and other types of things that could be recovered. And the bottles can also be reused. But once they're put together, what happens is that it becomes a bomb. Yeah? So what do you do with these bombs that are literally a bomb? Because once you have them closed up and the bacteria start eating all the glucose and things that are there, they start expanding the bottle, which eventually could, not always, but could explode. And the other interesting thing was that we were on a continuously changing site. Every time we went, the site would be completely different. But that's a whole debate for another story. So we started collecting these bottles, and we thought, again, as usually happens with us, it is these materials that dictate what we should do with them, and not us what we should do with these objects. I think that's a very beautiful characteristic of waste itself in general. So we have, as you may see, truck drivers, and also there's a lot of public transport. So all these people are people that have very little time to stop and pee. And this was amazing for us on two senses. One, because it's obviously a gender piece. I think all the women in this room here are saying, well, it definitely wasn't one of us, because it's very difficult for us to pee in one of these. So it has to do usually with these drivers. And on the other hand, we decided something important. This is like a very important characteristic of a fast pee society. It's not enough that we're a fast food society in general, that we have no time to stop and eat. Well, now, or then, because now is different, but then it was even worse. We were just a fast pee society. So what we decided to do was try and elucidate what was the actual state of course, we couldn't determine the state of mind of the people that had peed in these bottles, but yes, a physical state, conducting different types of examinations in the urine to try and tell us the health of the person that was there. And this was quite amazing because we did discover quite a few things. This was the first time we collaborated with the biochemistry lab in Mexico City of Simvestab. That is a very interesting scientific institution. And with them, we started running the tests and found out that there's a lot of fasting. That sounds a bit obvious. A lot of diabetes. That is something that that's another way of indexing diabetes if you want. We know that Mexico is the second country with the highest diabetes in the world. But here it's clear also with the urine and the practices of not peeing. And there was a lot of kidney failure as well. So the dialogue with other disciplines is always a very difficult step. I'm not going to go deep into that today, but it's always interesting. I think as urbanists, you always have to take into account that there are very many different interests from the very, very different actors of society invested in the city. And you have to develop ways to come back and forth with information about what's happening and ways to negotiate this information and find middle points that are interesting for all the disciplines and all the actors that are involved in a certain issue. So one of the things, after a long time of discussing what we would do with this, we actually started running tests of how to change this urine into something else. There's 2 points here that are very, very interesting. One is that you have to consider that when you start investigating something, for example, when you start investigating waste, you have this huge panorama of what's happening, very, very vast, and it becomes super difficult at a certain point to start narrowing down, but you suddenly start narrowing down what you will work on and how you will work on it and how you can develop that. And then in another part of that, once you're very straight into the problem, it becomes huge again. And that's a bit what happened to us with urine. So what we decided to do with this exhibition had a twofold thing going on. On one hand, we had these bottles that were exhibited in the National Center of the Arts as pieces of art, and in the nighttime, they were bottom lit, so the yellow of the urine would shine very beautifully. And then on this part, on the bottom, all of them had at the first row of information, the diagnosis, where we had found them, what color the urine was initially, so you could see if it had changed. It also had the location, and it also had the health of the person who had urinated that. And then after that, each one of the 20 pedestals we decided to include into this open and closed space had different types of stories and histories of urine. The medical history, the color history, and data about what urine contains, the methods of analysis, etc., etc., etc. So that was an important thing. And also, I think that's a very powerful weapon that art has also to be used by urbanism. It's what do you use to translate your results and make them communicatively interesting to an audience, and what audience do you want them to listen to? That's on one hand. And then the other image you're seeing here is this very strange bottle, black bottle with a drop of water. So after a long-term discussion about what urine can mean and what urine, the type of information we had, well, we extracted this like medical information on one hand, but we had this very important gold matter in there, that's water, the most precious thing we know on Earth. No? So we decided we would design with these scientific friends of ours a device to convert this urine into water. So these are the first experiments of how to convert the urine into water. At the end, when we exhibited these pedestals with the urine bottles, we developed this project, and this was one of those harsh negotiations. No? We wanted all these lab tools to be shown, and devices of how we have been purifying the water to make it drinkable. And the scientists wanted something very rudimentary or something very, very simple to make, because they wanted to convey that science can be done by everyone in any given moment. So what you see here is a device that converts urine. This top layer you see here is truck driver urine. This was tested in the lab many times, and what comes out on the other end is water. And so if you wanted to have a glass of wine in the opening of this exhibition, you would have to first drink a glass of water. A glass of water that came from urine of a truck driver. So who says yes to this drinking of water? Would you all drink it or not?
Not sure.
No one, I think.
No.
Not really.
No? Someone yes? Is there someone brave around there that would drink it?
If we didn't know it came from this experiment, probably yes. But when I see the image, no.
Okay.
But one question: is it harmful for the person to drink urine, or?
No, well, it's not hard. Look, there's lots of many practices, ancestral practices of drinking urine. It's just not very common to drink someone else's urine. It's more common to drink your own urine. There's urotherapy, that's drinking your own first urine in the morning. But of course, there's a taboo around these liquids. So it becomes difficult to think that it would be interesting to drink someone else's urine, and much less one that has been peed on in a bottle thrown through a window by you don't know who, when, or how.
But the body, at the end, it's a waste. So why we consume the body? Like it at the end of the day, it's a waste that the body don't want it in our body anymore. So why we consume it?
Well, actually, what you were consuming here was not waste. It was water, purified water. So all what you are calling waste, which is not necessarily waste, but that's another story, was sedimented into the device. And on the other end was totally pure water, drinkable water, like the one you get from your tab.
Yeah, okay.
Is it 100% safe?
Sorry?
Is it 100% safe?
100% safe. We did it with a very important, one of the most important scientific institutions in Mexico.
Okay, thank you.
Did you drink it?
Of course. Of course. How can I not? But the point as well is there's a very interesting point to that. The water you drink, you all of you drink or have drunk, or I think drink tap water. Where does that come from? Do you have any idea? What it contains, what it went through, what it was before it was drinking water? Probably not. A visit to the Center of Rehabilitation of Waters would be interesting. So the most amazing thing, these are part of the team of scientists that worked with us. He's an expert of genes, human genes, and she is a physicist. They all helped in making this formula, and you can see Emily's face here, because she herself, although she had tested the water and verified that it was 100% drinkable, she herself didn't want to drink it. She did, but she was also. So this is a contradiction of science, which is for me absolutely beautiful. And this led us a few years after to make a project, develop this idea much more. So this is urotransplantation. So it's a collective urine device you would go to the toilet in the museum, collect your urine, put it in a collective urine bowl, and it will go through a whole process of purification. This was on the 3rd floor, and it worked by gravity all the way down to the ground. And then you could come down and have a glass of water in the ground floor. And this is just a bit, just to close this and open it up afterwards at the end, after Marine, for a conversation. It's just to say that art, what we're doing with art here is just provoking this idea to think about all the infrastructure. We were discussing this with Jérôme the other day, that leads or takes the water that we drink into different types of scenarios. So what happens when you pee in a toilet, or what happens, where does that water go, and what does it have to travel? Or once you open the faucet of your for drinking water, what type of water is coming out, and how can we guarantee this is working? How is it distributed? How do people pee on the streets, or why? How could we use this pee in a different way? What does this imply in terms of public space? Paris is well known for, well, all big cities have places that are peed on, public places that are peed on. What does this mean for the buildings? What does it mean for the ground? What could we do with it, or how could we think about that? So I'll just leave you with all these questions, and if you want, at the end we can have a conversation of any of these things that interest you a bit or more or less. This, for example, was one of the oldest bottles we found. This site where we were picking up bottles was recently removed. So we got there a few weeks after, and it had been excavated. So these bottles came out. It seems they had been there for several years, and they're the most beautiful thing we have seen. But all these are sediments of urine, urea, and nitrites that you can find on the bottle. Anyway, this is a very short version of the project. I didn't go into very many of the details behind it, but I hope with this we have some curiosity, and we can continue the conversation towards the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
May I? Okay. So do you see the diaporama?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about urban metabolism and body fluids from an anthropological perspective, but linked with interdisciplinary work, and more specifically about human fertilizers, engrais humains in French. So it's an expression that comes from the 19th century, when engrais humains were really used as at a large scale in France, and notably in Paris, before sewers became a general way to manage human waste. So this work is part of a research program in Ecole des Ponts ParisTech, so in the campus Descartes, in the Laboratoire Leesu. This program is called Organisation des cycles carbone et phosphore dans le territoire, so organizing carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus cycles in territories. I'm not going to talk in details about this program, but just to say it's a systemic approach of alimentation excretion system. So how our alimentation production system is linked with the way we manage organic waste, and in particular our body waste in the cities and in the territories they are linked to. So it's an interdisciplinary work that links territorial ecology, agronomy, and social sciences. So as an anthropologist in this program, I'm more interested in the links between territorial metabolism, territorial ecology, so how elements circulate in territories, how they are managed, and our body, how it works, how we represent it to ourselves, knowledge and imaginaries that are associated to the links between the relations between body and the environment, and the becomings of our body waste in the territories where we live. So how it is managed, how it is further digested by big infrastructures that are created to make it disappear from our sites. And what is at stake here is what we hope to repair by managing separately and specifically human waste is coming out of a crisis, a systemic crisis that links sanitation, so excreta management, and fertilization on the other hand, so food production. So the first question I want to ask here, it's not linked to the Google form you're supposed to play with, but it's why do we go to the toilets as human beings? If someone wants to answer, it's possible.
Because it's a natural need.
Natural need, yeah. Somehow, yeah, it's because we're alive. And as we are alive, we exchange everyday material and energy with our milieu de vie, and we transform it to grow, to reproduce ourselves, to move, to protect ourselves, etc. That's what we call metabolism as a biological process, which is then translated in a more territorial perspective. That's why we call it territorial metabolism, because we live in societies, we live with infrastructures, etc. So urine and feces, they are at the center of this metabolism, because that's what we extract from our body, what we don't need anymore, what we give back to the environment, to the milieu that feeds us. Otherwise, we would just grow and grow and grow and grow. So as we don't. So in these body fluids, we have all the bricks that constitute us: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, nitrogen. We also extract by breathing carbon and oxygen, of course. And today, this organic material we extract from our body, we give back to the environment every day. It's mixed with the water streams in the city, which is linear with drinkable water at the entrance, and then used wastewater at the end. And we finally, if you see the column at the left here, so we dilute this product in a lot of water. And in this product, so you see in yellow urine and in brown feces, there are a lot of resources that could be used, but as they go to the aquatic environment, they become a pollution. That's why we have wastewater treatment plants to protect us from the danger that this resource represent when we put it in the water. So nitrogen and phosphorus that cause eutrophication, and alga bloom and stuff like that, and bacteria that cause disease if we ingest it again. So we have a system which is linear with, at the beginning today, food production, which is based on synthetic and mineral fossil fertilizers. And then at the end, wastewater treatment plants that can be considered somehow plants that destroy these fertilizers again. So the nitrogen and phosphorus, that when we put it in the water, we have to treat it, and it's kind of fertilizer destruction that we do here. And so we are in this line all together. And today there is a stream, a development of practices that try to separate all these streams. So rain, gray water, and finally urine and feces, to try to give it back to the soil, whereas today we put it in the water and spend a lot of energy to manage it. So from a cultural perspective, that means that trying to make our excreta as a resource circulate again toward the cultivated land by adapted treatment practices, it means that we are deploying new kind of relations between inhabited place and cultivated place, so between cities and the countryside, but also between our bodies as it digested organic matter, and then the fertility of the land. So it's a way of considering our digestive process as human beings as a way to reproduce fertility, as a way to be connected to this fertility of the land, whereas today it's not the case at all. Of course, it implies a lot of changes in the way we consider the place we live. So at first, it's supposed to collect it outside of the water to manage it separately. I'm not going to come into details here, but there are a lot of technical development here today, compost toilets and dry urinals, etc., etc. It also means transforming the place where we live, sanitation infrastructures, and then fertilization practices and infrastructures. So this source separation dynamic that I am involved in today, it's a way to develop new circular economy practices and filières. And then it's also an economic question, political question, because it asks us how should we put in common these resources, who owns them. So who owns my urine when I put it in a collecting device, and then it's going to be reused as resources, maybe sold on the market, on the fertilizer market. There is a question of Ilana here.
I say trash should own it. That's all.
Sorry?
No, yeah, forget it. Sorry. Go on,
okay,
go on,
I just, I didn't understand, but you can say it again just after. So it asks a lot of cultural, urbanistic, of course, and then political and ethical questions that we try to explore collectively in our research projects. And here I'm just going to focus in the last minutes of my presentation on how we can collectively create narratives and forms that can help us enter in this transition and ask collectively questions about how we want to do it. So it's going to happen, like source separation and recycling human excreta is going to happen. It's a trend, but now how are we going to do it? And how are we going to embrace this, this question? On a cultural basis. So the first thing I want to talk about is designing, mise en forme, creating forms. For example, you have here something that does exist. It's in Sweden. It's something which is both a urinal and a watering can for plants. So these kind of devices are really interesting as they can, we ask with them the status of objects. For example, a urinal is a place where you eliminate something, but here, as it's also a watering can, it's a place where you collect something which is precious. So with this kind of objects, you change the status of your urine. It's an example. You have the same in public space here in Paris, the Uri-trottoir. So it's the urinal on the sidewalk, which is designed to make people understand that their urine is going to be collected then to make fertilizer. Another one here at the Grand Voisin, which is a feminine urinal with all the system which is explained. So the second way to work with this cultural perspective is creating narrative. So that's more specifically what I do. First with writing workshops, for example. These workshops, we try to share souvenirs about a meal, and then the people with whom you've shared this souvenir has to write a story from the point of view of the food. And one of these, the participant write something about chicken nuggets, and it was really great to see how it was ingested, but then vomited, and where it came from, like the chicken, where it came from, etc. So it's a way to embody the food production infrastructure, and then to see where it goes afterwards. And there was a lot of stories of reincarnation in this writing workshop. It was really, really, really interesting. Another way to do it is to just to write poetry, and so that's what I do. So there is a paper here that you can read if you want, which links human body metabolism and urban metabolism with this idea that the city is devouring us as its own food. We also work with scenaries where we ask people to eat stuff at the end of these scenaries. Here it's bread, which is called a golden loop, that people are asked to taste. And it's made with wheat that was fertilized with urine. So it's a bit the same, but not exactly as what Ilana was talking about. But it's ingesting something as a way to thinking about it. So it's really engaging. And so the questions that come in this kind of events are really interesting for us, because you can see how people understand environmental risks and of course taboos about ingesting something that comes from another human body. And finally, I work with guided visits in the campus, so Campus Descartes, and I work with a designer here, Louise Raguet, and we have written stuff on the buildings, and we consider the campus as a city in miniature, where we circulate inside its metabolism. And so here it's written, here we can pee in drinkable water. So it's the toilets of the École des Ponts here, and it has been written on the door since 2 years now, so for 2 years. So I'm really proud of it because it hasn't been removed. So everybody knows it now. And then there is this other place, this other building where we collect urine ourselves to fertilize the shared garden we have there. And so everything is written there, so we can circulate back and forth into different metabolic organization of human waste management, using the campus itself as a scenario where we can play together. So this is the same, it's back to Boucle d'Or. And the last thing we do, which is maybe more classical, is doing workshops with actors to imagine this circular economy filières to manage human excreta. And here you have we go really further, because we have a lot of technical information we share. We are on a fictive territory, but we try to organize things together to try and imagine how we could really technically and collectively and on an economic basis organize this new way of managing things. So this is back to like more classical territorial animation tools, but I wanted to talk about it because it's really linked to what we've done before. So we need to go step by step, and we couldn't do that directly. We first have to ask questions about all this cultural dimension, what it does to us, asking questions about risks, and then maybe go more into the la fabrique de la ville, urban construction and management. So it's not a subject which is that easy to embrace. It's a subject which is difficult to talk about, and that's a good thing because it's not like stone, like it's our bodies which are at stake here. So we have to take this into consideration. I have finished my 15 minutes. So I leave the last chapter for you to see later on. I just wanted to talk about the different contexts in which this is implemented now in urban environments, so which are like breaches or holes into the urban fabric, which is transitory urbanism, participatory living places, shared places, and then public space. That's where things happen now. It's really, really, really rare in France for the moment that we implement source separation, like not we, but like urban planning actors, they implement source separation because there are a lot of steps to cross, to go through before it's integrated in like normal city planning, because it's such a revolution that we have to go step by step again. But still, there is an eco district in Paris which is going to collect urine of like several hundreds of people in a few years. So this is real. This is not a dream I'm talking about. It's really something which is really happening now. So it's important to take it into account. Thank you.
On behalf of my colleagues and myself, we thank you so much, both of you, Mrs. Boltvinik and Mrs. Legrand, for this outstanding and interesting presentation that will certainly enrich our culture towards this topic. My group and I thought that it would be interesting to do a small poll to know more about the perception or the personal point of view of our colleagues towards today's topic, which is the human waste. And that's why we asked two questions. The first one was, what do you understand when people talk about waste? So we've got a huge variety of answers, in total of 27 answers. Like, for example, they said, for us, waste is garbage, household waste, pollution, anything that is no longer usable, construction waste, organic waste, recycling, everything that's thrown on the ground, something dirty or smelly. So what is remarkable is that basically, based on these questions and these answers, no one thought that human feces or urine are considered as waste. So it was really interesting to do this relation between waste and the human feces or urine. And we ask another question that Audrey will tell you about it.
Yep. Yeah, time is really running out, so I'll try to go really fast. But the second question was, according to you, what role does urban planning play in human organic waste management? And the answers obviously greatly varied. But what's interesting is that there were, and I'm checking right now, I think 2 answers out of 31, which touched upon the question of human organic waste. So one mentioned the need for urban planners to ensure hygienic environment, and the other one comments on, or basically mentions the important role of urban planning in efficient and sustainable sewage treatment. But yeah, just 2 out of 31. So first of all, I guess the kind of huge diversity of answers first goes to show that us students in urban planning are not too sure of the role we're supposed to play in waste management, or at least we don't all agree on it. And on top of that, in the same way as what Karim was saying, basically human organic waste for most of us is kind of a non-issue, or like at least a non-urban planning issue. And I guess that in the light of the 2 presentations we just heard, this is really interesting because historically, human waste has been one of the biggest challenges in the development of cities and towns, and still today it remains a huge challenge in many parts of the world. So why, as students in urban planning, don't we kind of think about it? That's a good question, and I guess I'll open the floor for you guys to kind of get the questions and reactions and kind of ideas on that going, if you have any. Yeah.
Well, I put in the chat a link for, it's about a company, I think it's a French company. They produce gas with human fertilizer, and they created a communication about this. Voilà. So I shared this link because I think it's a good communication about the energies that comes from unexpected origins.
Well, I have to say that there have been several artistic projects that have done things similar.
Maybe people can be discussed. Oh my, sorry, I beg.
I'd just like to add that if one of you wants to ask a question in French, we'll translate that for you. If you
hard in French? Why is it hard in France to implement this kind of recycling processes?
Specifically in France?
Yes.
Effectively, it's more developed in, it has been more precocely developed in Northern Europe. Our hypothesis is that in France, we have sewage management system which is very centralized. For example, in Paris, we have one of the biggest wastewater treatment plant in the world, which is called HR. That was the picture before. So there is this history of centralization, and sewer was is really a pride in France, and it's really central in wastewater management. So thinking we're going to go out to take something out of the sewer is really breaking professional culture in the sanitation sector, I would say, to say it short. And then it's difficult everywhere because we have to change infrastructure in large perspective. But this perspective of decentralization and local management is particularly difficult to implement in France for this reason. Decentralized waste management, yeah.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Okay, we know that treatment and the technology is cost effective at the technology of the treatment. You hear me now? Okay, do you hear me now?
No, the connection is very poor.
Yeah. Do you hear me now? Better?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I was saying that, as you said, the human fertilizers, they are, okay, the technology used at the end of the day, is it cost effective to do this kind of treatment?
It is a transition. So for the moment, you have private actors that try to collect, for example, urine and then sell products made from this urine, or to collect compost toilet material and then sell the product at the end. So it's a liberal paradigm of like cost effectiveness. But then if you, so this doesn't really work for the moment. But obviously sanitation is a public service until now. And so we spend a lot of public money to manage our human waste. So if you put that in the equation, then you can make a good economic analysis of the situation, which has not been made yet. So that's something we are trying to work on. For example, so you have to think not at the same way as plastic bottle, for example, as something you can sell again at the end. Maybe plastic bottle is not a good example because I don't really know this industry. I guess there is a lot of public money which is spent here too. So I think I was mistaken. But if it's just a way to privatize waste management, I think it's not a good way to envision it.
Thank you so much.
I have a question directed more to Marine, I think, since you're a researcher. Is there a big body of research out there in social science on human excrements, or because of the kind of taboos surrounding it, the topic has kind of been neglected to a certain extent from the academic realm?
Ilana?
Go ahead. I think it was more directed towards you, but there's a huge body of work done. A huge body of work in both science and anthropology. We were discussing the other day with Marine, the investigation, it's used a lot for outer space, for example, where you cannot dispose of urine or excretions like we do here and just throw it out. You have to keep it in circulation, and you have to use the water in outer space that you urinate, for example. From outer space onto anthropology and questions of history, there's a huge amount of investigation. All the miasmas, the history of miasma has to do with expressions. It's a very big theme. Probably Marine can add more to that.
It's completely true. And then you on the other side, you don't really have like a sustainable management of pee and poo studies from a social science perspective. At least in France, it's not really developed, so we kind of trying to develop it. But there is a pee and poo studies field in anthropology in particular, because it's really something fundamental in human culture, as it's taboo. And then you have a lot of work on social acceptability of ecological management of human waste, for example. So it's a bit all over the place, but you have a lot of things here.
Thank you. And what about artistic practices around that?
That would be more for Ilana, I guess. And I can add.
Sorry, can you repeat it again?
I was asking whether there's also a kind of presence of those subjects in the artistic sphere.
Oh yes, tons. Well, not tons. Waste is a very non-poetic issue usually, but you have people like Wim Delvoye that has his cloaca is a system that converts food into shit. So it's a very sophisticated tube system that digests food and exactly cloaca, and excretes poo, for example. So you have things like that. Also Superflex, which is a Danish collective, designed a heating system and cooking energy system through the shit of cows mostly, but also human excretas. That are like the example that was given before the website, but this is an artistic project of many years ago, and it's a portable device that you can take to isolated communities to produce energy, to give just a couple of examples. Mm-hmm.
And then you have all this scatological perspective, but which is less linked to what we're talking about here.
We can put that in perspective, in a historical perspective that goes far beyond in the time, behind in the time. Remember this moment of romanticism with the glorification of ruins and decadence. And it had become a permanent theme in artistic and literary practices. And today, in today's music, you can still find something of that, no? In grunge music and some fashion styles also. So it's important also to remember that it's not just a contemporary transgression, that there's some deep roots about the thinking about around death, about decadence, and so.
An important message I would like to convey here is that I would take the example of Bill Gates, that is invested now in giving toilets to everybody and recycling human body waste, and he's really obsessed in breaking the taboo around human body waste and excrements. And as other anthropologists I've talked about this subject with, we agree on the fact that it's not a good thing to try and make disappear this taboo, this ambivalent nature of human body waste is important to preserve. It's not, it's subversive nature. As for death, as for waste in general. And so you have this ambivalence in circular economy development that all which is dark could be made shining as gold, but then commodified, simplified, etc. So this darkness, I think it's precious to preserve.
Okay, maybe it's time to conclude.
Well, on my behalf, I would like to say that it has been a pleasure sharing with you, and thank you for being here. And also, if you have any questions or things that you start remembering afterwards, don't hesitate and contact your fellow students that arranged this, and we can keep the dialogue going. I think it's an issue that the more you think about, the more it unfolds and the more interesting it gets. So I do hope that happens to all of you, that suddenly this stays in your mind and it starts polluting your brain.
It was a pleasure for us to attend to this presentation. It was really interesting.
Thank you.